Welcome back to the Stratcom podcast. Today, we're very fortunate to be joined by Strazdiņa, who is not only one of Latvia's finest and most experienced journalists, but she's also currently the foreign news editor working at the Latvian public broadcaster. Ina, thank you so much for finding the time.
Hello, Thomas. I'm very happy to be here. Thank you.
Yes, the pleasure is all ours. Maybe you can begin a little bit by telling our listeners, many of whom are not from Latvia, a bit about your career, your experiences as a journalist, how you got into the profession.
All right. I can tell that I have been journalist all my life. I started very early. I was 15 when I wrote my first article for the local newspaper at the time, Talsu Vēstis. I come from Talsi. And since then, I've been always in my profession. I started as a writer, as a writing journalist, and then I left my town for Riga and I became a radio journalist. Then I was Brussels correspondent for 13 years. So my career is right now in Latvian television. So I'm foreign affairs editor. And here I am.
In recent years, of course, in Latvia, a lot of your coverage from Ukraine has gotten attention. The reports you sent from that country. And one of the kind of themes that was discussed, at least at this conference, was actually the challenges and difficulties, but also the importance of reporting from the source, despite us having unlimited social media coverage of the war. Could you tell a little bit about what those experiences have been like, and maybe what have you learned as a journalist from reporting in Ukraine?
Yeah, Thomas, it has been a huge game changer, I would say so, because before Ukraine started, I have been in some war zones before. Afghanistan, Syria, Kosovo, which is not so much a war zone anymore, but still like in the countries which were under conflicts or going on or past conflicts. But Ukraine is different. It's so much different in many aspects. Firstly, this is emotionally much closer to us. We feel that in Ukraine we are basically in our home country, because Russia's war in Ukraine is also war here. And it's really dangerous to be there. I think this is the most dangerous war in recent history for journalists, because so many journalists have died, and we are targets. We are really targets there. So if you wear bulletproof jackets or helmet with press written, so you are basically target. So it has been very serious, but also I see that we must do that. This is our task, not only because we are foreign news journalists, but also we are journalists per se. We have to be there and to cover the war, because this is a question of of security of our country as well. So
why is it necessary for me to watch, let's say, your report about the war on Latvian television when I have my iPhone and I can go on Twitter and look at war footage and videos myself?
Yeah, this is a very important question, because I think if we go ourselves, we bring that information which is most important for our audience. We can see with our eyes. And I believe that people trust more if they see journalists who are normally in the studio in Riga, and they are there and they see it all, experience all with their own eyes, and they bring stories really which are like experienced personally from Latvian side somehow, yeah. And that's true that there are a lot of foreign journalist agencies which bring also information in for example, European Broadcast Union. We can share information there, and we can take work from our colleagues who are from Netherlands or Estonia, who also are in Ukraine, and we don't need go ourselves in a way. But still it's very important to build, to make this information, to bring this information for our audience with our own eyes.
Latvian public broadcaster by Latvian standards, it's the biggest media outlet, I imagine. But of course, compared to international media outlets, CNN, BBC, Deutsche Welle, it's tiny, right? So when you go to Ukraine, I assume that you do not have a huge team and security detail and technical assistance and so on. So what is that like, working for a small media outlet there?
Yeah, we are super small, but we are quite efficient. Actually, we were discussing this with my colleagues quite a lot, how we look like in a battlefield. Because when we go to Ukraine, we go normally two persons. There is a journalist and cameraman. In rare situations, also driver. When we have to bring more technique, or there are special cases when we have to be a little bit more of us. And sometimes we had also fixer, so-called fixer in Ukraine, Ukrainian guy, journalist as well, who help us with filming and also contacts. But normally we are basically two of us. And this is extremely different from big companies. They have not only journalists and cameramen, but also security guard. There is translator, there is like sound man, there is a whole team. And it's much, much better to be in a team. This is for sure, especially in difficult situations. Yeah, but we can't survive as we are. We don't have so much money, and we are not so rich. So we try to be efficient also in a small company.
You mentioned that the war in Ukraine is different for you, different for Latvians than, the dozens of other conflicts happening around the world, for understandable reasons, because we can we have a direct emotional connection, a historical connection. We can imagine ourselves in Ukrainian shoes. Could you maybe talk about some specific experiences that you had while reporting there that were very emotionally moving for you, that were not just, interesting from a professional journalistic perspective, but that really emotionally resonated?
Actually, these emotions are always when we go there. But for me, the most emotional moment was I was covering very tragic events in Hroza. It's a small village near Kharkiv. And there was a situation when people went to the funeral. Basically, there was funeral for soldier who was killed in the battle and was brought home, and people were in cemetery, and then they went to cafeteria, which is the only cafeteria in the village, very small one, and they were 60 of them, local medics, local farmers, local teachers, local pensioners, like normal people there. No one from army, just the soldiers' family, but there were no soldiers at all. And someone from that village gave contacts, coordinates to Russian army, and they shot a single rocket, 1 o'clock afternoon, and all people who were in that cafeteria were killed, 60 of them. And that village is so small that they have 300 people at all. So basically, every second home in that village was...
The entire community.
Yeah, entire community. And we were there 2 days after attack, and we saw flowers, we saw blood in the grass, we saw that cafeteria, and we spent there 1 week filming funerals. There were every single day funeral, and they were burying like 5, 4, 6 people from one family every day. So that small cemetery grew bigger every minute. And we went also to morgue. We saw people in plastic like boxes, plastic bags, parts of them. And families came to recognize from tattoos or some things which left that there is his father or mother. And that was, Thomas, I can tell you, when I talk about that, I keep my tears in, because it was super emotional. And that was not like Frontline, but that was Frontline, civil Frontline. And we saw actual suffering in one village. And we are still friends with some of the people. We take care of them, we call, sometimes visit if we are near Kharkiv. So for me, that was the most
So I wanted to
emotional.
ask about that. Do you ever build personal relationships with people there, or is that also come with its own set of difficulties?
Yeah, we sometimes, we stay in contact with some, because in that situation, you naturally stay close with people. Of course, I can't say that we are like super good friends or something like this, but we know each other. We are in contact. We try to call or write or ask how are you. So just to keep that link.
More than 2 years now since the full-scale invasion, there is a lot of talk about kind of fatigue of the war, that people are tired. People not only, of course, in Ukraine, but also supposedly some, Western audiences, and that it's actually more difficult to also keep Ukraine in the news. That there are other topics, not only other conflicts, but just in general, that it is more and more becoming challenging to put reports on Ukraine in the kind of news prime time, and that this results in the need for reporters in Ukraine to kind of take more risks, to make the coverage more, to go closer to the front line, to make the coverage more somehow dramatic. Is this the case?
Exactly, Thomas. Actually, this is a huge problem because fatigue is super toxic. This is natural because, psychologically, people can't stand tragedies and war all of the time in the news. That's natural. That in some point people get tired of that. But we have been discussing with my colleagues as well how we should work not to let it be, not to let this fatigue grow. And yes, that's true that more dramatic stuff kind of wakes up people again, but also that doesn't work anymore so well. So we try to talk about Ukrainian strengths, what do they do themselves more, or what kind of knowledge we can take from them. This is new aspect we are trying to tell our people now, basically to maybe sometimes go away a little bit from the emotions to the most practical point of view. Yeah. So, but I totally agree that reporting about war, in some point it gets super difficult. Syria, after 2 years, nobody cared about that, and I really remember that. And with Ukraine is different because we are still worried because we are in the Baltics, but for the international journalists, I know my colleagues from other countries which are really struggling to sell their stories to their bosses.
I was wondering, I saw somewhere that, the figures are different, but I saw that there is a statistic that more than 10,000 foreign journalists or correspondents are in Ukraine or have been reporting from Ukraine. I was wondering if you maybe have met colleagues from countries that are very far away, that maybe do not have this direct emotional connection with Ukraine. One of the panels at the Riga Stratcom Dialogue Conference is focusing on how to communicate the importance of this war to audiences in the global south, maybe, where it is maybe somewhere where maybe the consequences of the war are not so directly seen. I was wondering, maybe have you met journalists from the Middle East or from Africa in Ukraine?
Yeah, actually we met, but briefly, Japanese. And I heard from my colleagues in Ukrainian journalists that more and more colleagues from Africa come and see how is the situation there. Also Chinese journalists are there, which I think is super important. Yeah, they are. They are not many of them, but I think it's really important because we understand the war, but to sell it in a way to the faraway countries. That is crucial.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I apologize for coming with all of these kind of heavy, darker questions, but maybe one concluding one. There is a significant kind of literature, but also analysis suggesting that one of the kind of most serious consequences also of the war in Ukraine is the mental health toll that has been put upon Ukrainian society, spending years living in this stress and being subjected to Russian terror tactics of striking civilian objects, civilian housing, not to mention the veterans returning from the front line, that this will create perhaps the largest mental health crisis in the world. Now I was wondering, maybe from your perspective, from being on the ground, from speaking to people, different parts of society, what do you have maybe any thoughts on this, on what you saw in terms of the mental health aspects of the war?
Exactly, Thomas, and they are trying to work already now. There are campaigns like You Are Not Alone, or they're trying already to talk to people, let them talk with psychologists. But the problem is that Ukrainian psychologists are in the war situation themselves. So they need help themselves. So what Ukrainians always tell us when we are there, please bring Latvian specialists to us because we speak language. And Russian is still active there, I can tell you, yeah? So we can communicate, and this is something we can really help. But it's true that now Ukrainians are holding because they can't afford to be weak, cry, or etc. But when it will end, I even don't want to think of that. That would be a very huge problem indeed.
On that note, Ina Strazdiņa, thank you so much for sharing your insight. It was really a privilege.
Thank you so much, Thomas. Thank you.